Hey guys, it's Lynn, day 2 of the 22 Push-Up Challenge 2.0 for me, and happy to be here again today. As promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about military sexual trauma, as one of the major issues our combat vets, or many of them, face upon return home from the combat theater. Many vets actually, during training, have the experience of MST. So I looked around for some current articles, and I did find one that was really good. I have posted it. It talks mainly about MST being an issue that female veterans have reported, and that is an issue, a mental health issue, and obviously physical health issue as well, that females have sought treatment for in very large numbers. But the article also acknowledges that MST is also something veterans, regardless of gender, often experience, and just like sexual trauma outside of the military, it often does go unreported, and I imagine that is for a number of reasons. Today, what I wanted to really bring home was that often there are symptoms of MST that culminate in sort of a disorganized, disoriented behavior, not disoriented really, but kind of fragmented behavior and avoidant behavioral patterns. So often veterans, for example, the article talks about one female vet who wore a lot of tattoos, colored her hair in various colors, sort of outside of the standardized norm. And what the nurse therapeutic person that was working with her realized that this was this person's way of keeping people away from her, keeping her safe by keeping people away from her. That is, she was keeping herself safe by keeping people away from her. Sexual trauma does all kinds of things to a person. When you go through sexual trauma, quite often it's really difficult to rebuild any kind of trust in the world, whether it is your spaces you share with your friends or your personal spaces. So when we layer on top of that combat experiences or the need to deploy into a combat situation, potentially with someone who has traumatized you sexually, or even if not, in this unfamiliar, very violent, very charged situation you are going into, that can really inform on un- and subconscious levels how a person does behave and react. So while outside of the combat theater we may see avoidant behavior such as outside of the standardized norm in terms of hair color, a lot of piercings, tattoos, this kind of thing. And that's not always the case. People with piercings, tattoos, and odd hair color, not all of those people are avoiding people because of some past trauma. But it is something that in the article I posted today, the therapeutic nurse did notice with one person in particular she had worked with, and had made mention that she had seen that type of behavior before. It just creates this sort of boundary around the person. And I think when people are pushed to the wall in terms of their safety and well-being, particularly with sexual trauma, quite often it is the case because you cannot rebuild trust, or it's very, very difficult to rebuild trust without a lot of hard work and safe spaces to acknowledge what has happened to you. The behaviors associated with MST that has been untreated often sort of cross-correlate with behaviors associated with PTSD. And so in my blurb that I've posted with the article, I'd like to reiterate what I iterated there, and that is I would postulate that potentially a lot of the unreported male MST that does occur, perhaps behaviors associated or that have come from that have been either misdiagnosed as PTSD, or the MST has been hidden by a real diagnosis of PTSD. MST is very real. It does not just affect women. It affects men as well. People of any gender orientation are at risk of MST. And in the past few years, the military has done quite a lot of research and statistics and has found that MST is much more common, I think, than they had previously believed in the military. The article cites that more particularly in the Navy, or pardon me, not the Navy, the Army, than in the Marines. And as a matter of fact, the article goes on to mention that I think in 2015, the Marine Corps Journal, at least in the U.S., dedicated an entire issue to military sexual trauma. So I'll be digging around, doing a little bit more research, looking for that journal, and hopefully have more information for you tomorrow. There is a lot to take in, but this is a really, really important piece of the puzzle that our veterans are faced with, many of them at least, when they return home from combat. Some people, as I've mentioned before, even experience MST during the training process, and that puts them in such a scary, unfamiliar and difficult space, to say the very, very least. MST is something that we cannot ignore, and I think it needs to be part of our conversation about what our veterans go through when they're training, when they're deployed, and then when they return home. And what we need to do with this conversation is not just talk about what happens, but we need to talk about how we create safe spaces for our veterans to talk about their experiences, whether it be training or in the combat theater or upon return home. Hopefully all three. Safe spaces are really hard to recognize when you've been through great trauma. So I think we need to help our vets find the spaces that are safe for them to talk, and hopefully be able to move forward in terms of the issues that they are stuck dealing with after putting themselves on the line for our safety and well-being. Okay. So tomorrow I'm going to hopefully have some information for you folks on male MST. I'll do my best, and I'm going to do my 22 push-ups now, and we'll see how it goes today. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think that was 22. As always, I will count them, make up any push-ups I've missed. Apologies today, guys. It's a bit of a difficult arthritis day, but hey, you don't get sick time in combat, so I'm pushing through my push-ups. Anyhow, folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Protect our protectors, love our veterans, and remember, keep this conversation going. Great topic, great thing to talk about, brainstorm about. How do we create safe spaces for our veterans to talk about their experiences? Whether it be MST, combat related, training related, how do we create those safe spaces? How do we allow people to be acknowledged and accepted and feel like it's okay to talk about what's going on? All right, ciao for now. That's it for me today. Talk to you tomorrow.